My dear friends, this year I started doing 3.5-day fasts. So far I've done 3 of them. In this video, I will be sharing with you the whys, the hows, and my personal experience. What I was doing to get through the fast, how I was feeling, so that you too know what to expect, what I was measuring, to know what was going on inside my body, and to stay motivated. I will also tell you about my results. And of course, if in your opinion this information is useful and interesting, please consider liking or sharing the video and subscribing to the channel. The chances are that if you are watching this video, you have already read about the benefits of a series of 3-day-long fasts. So I'll go through the whys, through the benefits very briefly, and I'll focus on the benefits specific to a series of 2 to 4-day-long fasts. My reasons for fasting. Why did I decide to starve myself for 3 days at a time? The first reason is the immune system. There is research data from human trials, not just in vitro or even animal studies, human studies, on the impact of fasting on the immune system. And the findings of those studies are that a series of fasts that last between 2 and 4 days resets the immune system, the part of the immune system provided by the white blood cells. There are many different white blood cells, so they're also called leukocytes. They circulate throughout our bodies looking for invaders such as viruses, bacteria, fungi, and if they detect an invader, they launch an immune attack. The bottom line is that fit white blood cells means better immune system. As we age, the white blood cells are not as effective, and failing immune system is one of the hallmarks of aging. So what does fasting do to help with the issue at hand? It does 3 things. It removes all dysfunctional white blood cells, it reactivates and produces more blood stem cells, and eventually it builds new and fit white blood cells. And a couple more words on the blood stem cells. In the medical literature, they are also called multipotent hematopoietic stem cells. Red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, if you've heard of PRP, platelet-rich plasma, they all come from the blood stem cells. In the 2 to 4 day long fast, those stem cells switch from the dormant state to a state of self-regeneration, and more blood stem cells are produced. And that gradually brings me to the second of my reasons for fasting. Just overall, why would such a regeneration only happen with the blood stem cells but not with other stem cells? It's very likely that stem cells in other tissues and organs get a boost from fasting too. It's just that blood is so much easier to test. And there was a study by MIT published in 2018 that showed that at least in mice that is the case. Other types of stem cells too get into a regeneration mode after fasting. All in all, the likelihood that different types of my stem cells will get regenerated after fasting is a good enough reason for me. My third reason for 3-day-long fast. There is some limited evidence that fasting kills cancer cells, and it really should. Fasting depletes glycogen stores. Glycogen is a condensed form of glucose and the midterm source of glucose for our bodies, and I'll talk about that later. And the cells are left with ketones to use for the production of cellular energy in the form of ATP. Cancer cells have altered metabolism and they are not efficient in utilizing ketones. Cancer cells need glucose. No food and glycogen stores are depleted, minimal glucose, primarily ketones are available, cancer cells are starving. So to me, a 3-day fast, it's a cancer preventative tool. I don't have any personal family history of cancer, but that's one of the beasts that none of us has a guarantee against. Those 3 reasons are good enough for me to justify being hungry for 3 days. To just briefly recap, that's resetting of the immune system, likely regeneration of different types of stem cells, and also likely a cancer preventative tool. also, from a longer fast, you'll get all the same benefits as from a shorter fast, for example, a day and a half, but on a bigger scale. And some examples of such benefits are elevated levels of autophagy, improved nutrient sensing, improved insulin sensitivity. When I share with other people that I started doing 3-day long fasts, the most frequent reactions that I get, it's either a question or a statement. The question that I'm being asked is whether it was hard, and then the statement is, it's too hard, I would not be able to do that. And I can tell you that fasting, it's an amazing anti-aging tool given to us by nature. And any adult without underlying health conditions that would prevent that adult from going through the fasting experience can absolutely do that. Some 15 or 16 years ago, I passed my last certified management accountant exam, and then someone asked me if it was hard passing those exams. To which I answered, well, that depends on how well you are prepared. Later on, I thought that the answer had been useless. Now that I'm looking back, it was not useless at all, because preparation often makes a difference between success and failure. And we're talking about a 3-day long fast. Being prepared will make a difference between the fasting experience being not necessarily easy breezy, but somewhat easy and quite doable, and not being able to go through with it. What do I mean under preparation, and what did I do to prepare? I can break down everything that I did into 3 categories: mental, physical, and logistics. Mental preparation. In my opinion, that's the most important one, because everything begins with our mindset and with the ideas that we hold. In this particular case, with our beliefs and concepts about our abilities. So the first component of the mental preparation, what I found very helpful, and what I think you too will find helpful, is acquiring firm knowledge that my body and your body is absolutely capable of going without food for extended periods of time, at least as far as the energy requirements are concerned. I picked 2 ways to explain that. The first one is evolutionary, let's call it that. Humans only invented agriculture some 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. As you can imagine, prior to that, it was not always possible to find enough food. So it is very likely that our hunter-gatherer ancestors were going without food or with minimal food for periods of 1 to 5 days, and also likely that happened many times during their lifetimes. Had they experienced low energy levels and muscle wasting when they were going without food, then they wouldn't be able to hunt, they wouldn't be able to survive. And you wouldn't be watching this video now, because as species we would be extinct. But even after the agriculture was invented, what is human history? It's the history of wars, cataclysms, natural disasters, and, you might have guessed it, famines. People who are alive today are descendants of those who survived the famines, who were able to live without food for somewhat extended periods of time. It's only about 100 years or so that the majority of the world have enough food on a daily basis, and 100 years is nothing on the evolutionary scale. So your DNA carries all the tools necessary to fast. Let's now look at our metabolism, the biochemical explanation of why we can go without food for days. Our bodies can utilize for energy proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. After we eat, blood glucose goes up, and also the body stashes unused glucose in a condensed form called glycogen in the liver for the system-wide use, and in the muscles for the local use. Now, if this information is new to you, pay attention here. An average adult typically stores enough glycogen to last for about 40 hours as a source of energy. As a matter of fact, For the first 24 to 26 hours after the last meal, glycogen will be the only source of energy. Glycogen is broken down into glucose. And it's only after 24 to 26 hours of no food that the body will start figuring out that the glycogen stores are being depleted, and then it will gradually start switching the gears to utilize fats as another source of fuel. Fatty acids that will come from fat, from the fat cells, from the adipose tissue. And this is why when I speak to some people, they're telling me that they feel that they can tolerate 24 hours without food and then it becomes uncomfortable. That's why. Because after 24 hours, the body is switching the gears and the change is uncomfortable. There is a hormonal interplay, enzymes have to be produced, certain reactions activated. But nonetheless, your DNA has blueprints to produce all the necessary worker proteins, all the enzymes for all those processes. And glycogen is only depleted after about 42 to 48 hours. And this is when the body is fully using the fats from the fat cells as the energy source. And I'll show that later to you on a graph. Now let's talk about the fat. Most of us have at least a couple of pounds of fat to spare, 1 kilogram. 1 pound of fat provides 3,500 calories, 3,500 calories. And for a person my size, if I'm to lead a sedentary lifestyle, that's 2 days of worth of energy needs. So if I'm fasting for 3.5 days, all I'm doing, I'm depleting my glycogen and then I'm using roughly plus minus a pound of fat. If I'm physically active, I'll use slightly more. And so if we were to summarize, your body has all you need to fast. You have the mechanisms imprinted in your DNA and you have more than enough energy stores to do so. Another part of the mental preparation is to have some personal experience on a smaller scale. So you have information that our bodies are very capable of fasting, but it's also very helpful to go through some shorter fasting experiences first so that it will demonstrate to you that you're capable of doing that. I personally started with the intermittent fasting first about 5 years ago. I typically eat during a 6 to 8 hour window, and sometimes my first meal is not even until 3 or 4 p.m. And also about 4 years ago, I started doing 1-day fasts, which would typically last 40 to 42 hours because I skipped the breakfast the next day. And with those experiences, first of all, it became very normal to me to not eat for extended periods of time, and I also knew what to expect. If you are contemplating a 3-day fast, there is a good likelihood that you have already been doing 1-day fast. But if you have not, then that would be a very good place to start with a shorter fast first. The logistical part of the preparation. The first one, I bought blood glucose and ketones monitor. It was interesting for me to see what was going on inside my body, the blood glucose and ketones levels. And I was taking many measurements as I was fasting. And it was also helping with the motivation because typically a switch from using glucose to using ketones as a primary fuel source occurs on the second day, or at least by the end of the second day of the fast. So it was very encouraging to me to see that I was getting into the deep ketosis, therapeutic deep ketosis zone, and you may want to consider getting such a monitor as well. Another piece of the logistical preparation is to think in advance how you're going to minimize or eliminate cues and triggers that remind your mind about food and about eating. For example, if you in your family are the one primarily responsible for the grocery shopping and cooking, you may want to do those things in advance before you start fasting so that you don't have to deal with those items when you are hungry. If you work in a place where people snack all the time, then maybe you want to plan or schedule your fast in a way that at least the second and the third day fall on your days off. Another thing that I did is I planned in advance on the foods that I would be breaking my fast with, and I'll tell you about breaking fast at the end of the video. And I bought those foods in advance. The third major component of preparing to fasting is physical, your body. Our liver and kidneys are not always able to flush out all the toxins that we receive from food and from the environment, and it's a scientific and medical fact that those toxins accumulate in our fat tissue, in our fat cells. When a person is fasting and the body is starting to use fats as a primary energy source, the fats are broken down and the toxins are released into the bloodstream. And again, the kidneys and liver are not necessarily able to eliminate those toxins right away. So the toxins are circulating throughout the body, poisoning the person. Not only the person is hungry because they're fasting, but they also don't feel well. And that's one of the reasons why people don't feel well during the fasting, because of the toxins in their body. To minimize that unpleasant experience, it's a good idea to do a detox before you contemplate a 3-day fast. Just in case if you are wondering if you have toxins that would be released during the fast, there are some sources that will tell you that having a healthy diet is sufficient for you to detox. I'll tell you from my personal experience that is not the case. And no wonder, because these days toxins are everywhere. They found Prozac in fish in Texas. I have been a healthy eater my entire life. Almost everything I eat is organic, pasture-raised, wild caught. I don't have toxic substances in my household. Nonetheless, I personally could feel a big difference in how I feel after I was doing detox. The first ones I was doing not because of the fasting. And I think my fasting would have been much more difficult if I didn't do a detox first. So to minimize that experience and pleasant part of the fasting, it's better to do a detox before you go into a 3-day fast. The second part of the physical preparation is pretty straightforward. Try to eat healthy at least on the day preceding your fast. Lots of leafy green vegetables, healthy proteins. And what I personally did, I also took a bit of a bigger dose of supplements, vitamins and minerals that I would normally take. Finally, I am a gourmet. I really enjoy delicious food and I didn't want to feel deprived for a long time. So I made sure that I really enjoyed the meals that I had on the day before the fast. And that pretty much concludes everything that I did to prepare for the fast. What was I doing during the fast to make the experience easier and more pleasant? First of all, I was drinking lots of water. You want to stay hydrated during the fast, and you also want to help your body getting rid of the toxins. I was also drinking lots of tea and coffee. They have no negative impact on the fasting benefits, and coffee helps with the hunger. The tea that I was drinking is also helping with the hunger. The tea is called Jeogulam. It's also known as immortality tea. And in the video description, I'm going to include a link to my Instagram post about that tea. I wasn't eating anything. There is some data that shows that eating up to 500 calories a day with a very specific breakdown of nutrients will still preserve the benefits of fasting. But to me personally, it's easier to not eat anything at all than to eat a little bit and control how much I eat, so I never even considered it. During my first fast, I found out that I was having muscle spasms on the second and third day of fasting, and I was also craving salt. So I had some salt that helped with the muscle cramps. And in my second and third fast, I also started taking multi-minerals and sometimes multivitamins, and they had no impact on the blood glucose or blood ketone levels. It's also a very good idea to stay physically active during the fast. Engage in at least moderate levels of physical activity. I was walking a lot on a treadmill at an incline and at a high speed, and I was hiking a lot. With that, you get faster metabolism, you're going to feel better, you're going to deplete your glycogen stores faster, and you're going to get to the state of the deep therapeutic ketosis faster. And definitely staying physically active distracts from the thoughts of food and eating. And as I was mentioning earlier, I was measuring my blood glucose and ketone levels, and I'm going to show them to you on a graph now. The orange line is blood glucose and the purple line is the blood ketones. And the data on the graph comes from my second and third fasts. The numbers on the vertical axis are millimoles per liter. Those are the units of measurement of the concentration of glucose and ketones in blood. In the United States, glucose is typically measured in milligrams per deciliter, while ketones still in millimoles per liter. I standardized everything to how it's measured in the rest of the world, which is millimoles per liter. The conversion is 18 to 1. For example, blood glucose of 100 milligrams per deciliter is the same as 5.6 millimoles per liter. On day 1, the blood glucose starts going down and ketones start going up. And that is the time, as I was explaining, when the body is sensing that the glycogen is becoming depleted and it starts increasing production of the ketones. The interesting changes start occurring on the second day. You can see how significantly blood glucose starts going down. In the morning, it's already 4.2 millimoles per liter, which is 75 in milligrams per deciliter. In the late afternoon, it looks like all my glycogen is gone. My body is using primarily ketones produced from fatty acids. And then in the evening of the second day, ketones are already higher than the glucose, and the glucose is about 60-65 milligrams per deciliter. That trend continues into day 3, until the blood glucose and ketone levels more or less stabilize. So by measuring my blood glucose and ketone levels, I'm seeing what the fasting does to my body. Now, in case if you were wondering, the glycogen is gone by the end of the second day, right? Then where does the glucose come from after that? I put a blue oval over that glucose. There is a process in our bodies called gluconeogenesis, creation of new glucose. We always need to have some blood glucose because red blood cells and liver cannot use ketone bodies. Also, likely brain cells need at least some glucose. And our bodies can make some glucose from triglycerides and from some amino acids. Triglycerides is the form, the molecule, in which we store fat in the fat cells. And some amino acids, likely from autophagy, since we are talking about a prolonged fast, can also be used to create glucose. Getting back to the ketones, you can see that my switch to higher ketones occurred in my case before the end of the day 2. But if you have a high carbohydrate meal and sweets right before the fast, it may take you longer and the transition can be more unpleasant. And the sharp change back to higher glucose and lower ketones that you see on the day 4, that's breaking of the fast. How was I feeling during my 3-day fast? Let's talk about hunger, energy levels, and mental and emotional state. Days 1 of all 3 fasts were rather unremarkable, except that I was feeling hungry. But the hunger was not intolerable, and it shouldn't be intolerable, especially if you are well prepared. And that's why in the beginning of the video I spent so much time talking about the preparations. However, if you still get obsessive thoughts about food and about eating, you may want to remember that our hunger is more mental. We have a habit of eating. And the second thing is, keep your eyes on the prize. Why did you decide to fast? You want to rejuvenate your body. And the benefits that you will be getting from the fast by far outweigh the short-term discomfort that you may experience from feeling hungry. And also, talking about the hunger levels, for me, they stayed the same on the second and on the third and on the fourth day, just like on the first day. So if you can get through 1 day of no food, then you can definitely go through the entire fast. The next one, the energy levels. It was my experience, and it may be different for you, but I was quite surprised to find that on all the days of fasting, including the fourth day when I was breaking the fast, my energy levels were exactly the same as on the days when I am eating. Even though I was not sitting around, I was engaging in some moderate level physical activity. Days 2 and 3 and the mental and the emotional states are the most interesting part. On days 2, that was the case in all of my fasts, I was starting to feel weird. When I was trying to pick the words how to describe that state or that feeling, the best I can say is that I wasn't quite feeling myself. It wasn't bad, it wasn't good, positive or negative, it was just weird. And that weirdness continued into days 3 and 4. However, on the day 3, I was getting the sense of an amazing mental clarity and focus and a sense of tranquility. I was feeling so calm, like nothing could bother me. And so the combination of the mental clarity and serenity on the third and the fourth day of fast, the fourth day is when I was breaking the fast, actually made the entire experience very pleasant. And now the prize. What measurable results did I get from my 3.5 day fast? Earlier in the video, I already showed you the graph with the data on my glucose and ketones levels during fasting, and I'm going to briefly bring it up again. Once again, the horizontal axis shows the progression of time, and the vertical axis, 0 to 20, that's millimoles per liter, the units of measurement for glucose and ketones. The green line is the glucose ketone index, GKI. The index is a simple ratio that helps interpreting the levels of ketosis, and it's calculated exactly as it sounds like, which is the glucose reading divided by the ketone reading, in the same units of measurement. For example, my very first data point on the graph for the GKI is 17.8 at the noon of the first day. That's the glucose of 96 milligrams per deciliter. Convert to millimoles per liter by dividing by 18. I get 5.3 millimoles per liter of glucose. The ketone level at that time is 0.3. 5.3 divided by 3/10, the GKI is 17.8. And that is not ketosis at all yet. GKI in ketosis is below 9. I'm going to take out the data point of 17.8. The red circle shows the switch from using glucose to using ketones as the primary fuel source. I talked about that earlier. But even before that switch occurs, already on the first day of fasting, the body is getting into moderate levels of ketosis, marked with a green rounded rectangle. That level of ketosis is already helpful, for example, for the insulin sensitivity. On the second day of fasting, I'm getting into the high therapeutic levels of ketosis with an even broader range of health benefits, such as anti-inflammatory. But even that is not my goal. The deep therapeutic ketosis is. That's a GKI below 1, the long rounded rectangle at the bottom. And in my case, it lasted from about 5-6 p.m. on the day 2 until I broke my fast on the day 4. That is one of my measurable results and my prizes for the fast of that length, about 40 hours of that very deep ketosis. As I was describing earlier, cancer cells have altered metabolism and they depend on glucose. The deep ketosis places an energy stress on precancerous cells and cancer cells if there are any, and hopefully starves them. In the first hours after breaking the fast, the GKI is still below 3, the high levels of ketosis. The other major reward for me as a result of those fasts was the confirmation on the renewal of my white blood cells. In the beginning of the video, I was sharing with you that one of the main reasons why I decided to do 3-day long fast was that there are studies that show that a series of fasts that last between 2 and 4 days lead to the renewal of the white blood cells and to the resetting of a large component of the immune system. I did blood work pre-fast and on the 3rd day of fasting. When I was doing testing pre-fast, my white blood cell count was within the normal range, and on the 3rd day of fast it went down 13%. And supposedly fasting kills old and damaged leukocytes, white blood cells. Then when you are refeeding after the fast, your body regenerates the lost white blood cells and you end up with new and healthy white blood cells. The way the body works, it's not a precise math, but it looks like several such fasts and I'll have a completely new pool of white blood cells. My blood test confirmed that I achieved the results that I wanted, which is new white blood cells and a bit of a rejuvenation of the immune system. Breaking the fast and refeeding your body after the fast is also an important part of the process. Your digestive system was somewhat dormant for 3 days and you want to reintroduce food gently, and you also want to nourish your body. I placed an emphasis on probiotics, fiber, and nutrients. The first thing that I ate, or rather drank, after the fast was kefir. It has more probiotic beneficial bacterial cultures and nutrients than yogurt does. And generally speaking, kefir is at the top of my healthy foods list. Another gentle version for breaking a fast is bone broth. And then wait a little bit and add some foods which are high in probiotics. I waited an hour after kefir, then I had organic sauerkraut, then waited a little more and bone broth. So again, I'm getting fiber, probiotics, and easy to digest nutrients from the bone broth. So I waited another couple hours and I had avocado and my version of chimichurri, which is chopped Italian parsley and cilantro, organic extra virgin olive oil, and some seasonings. And yet again, nutrients and fiber, and also some extra fats from avocado and olive oil to stay a little bit longer in the state of ketosis. The dinner is almost back to normal, but at the healthiest end of the spectrum. So I had all 3 times when I had fast wild-caught salmon and raw low glycemic load vegetables. I was telling about low glycemic load diet in my previous video, and also vitamins and minerals. After that, you pretty much go back to normal, but you need to give your body at least a couple of days for refeeding, so healthy diet is highly recommended. Your body needs to build new organelles in place of the ones removed by autophagy during the fast, and also build new cells where needed. I wonder if after listening to this video, you decided that fasting for 3 days is not only worth it, but is also doable, and that you too can do it. If you have comments, questions, or would like to share your experience, please do so in the comments to the video. And if this information was helpful, like and subscribe.